is your bridge to the land and people of Israel.
Um, I want to touch on. Can I go into the subject that I'm really,
Yeah,
really
go
want to
for
talk
it.
about? Okay,
Yes.
I want to give a little background. I'm kind of presentable these days. I wish I had my ID card. Um, Before I moved up to the Golan, I used to have long, bushy, fuzzy payas, and a long beard down to here, and I'd be running around in the woods. When I lived in Gush Etzion, I lived in a place that was known to, it was the Arabs called it Jabal Majnun, meaning the hill of the crazies, because I was like very much, what you imagine a settler, crazy settler to be like, and that was what I was. Um, and I remember in 2000, was it 2005 that Israel pulled out of Gush Katif? Um, it was another event that divided Israel on so many levels. There were massive, massive protests, millions of people in the streets. It really divided Israeli society. I mean, the murder of Rabin came out of the Oslo process. Oslo was, I think, the beginning of the nightmare, because it was like, yes, land for peace, when every Israeli knew that no matter what we gave them, they would continue try to killing us. And we saw that 2 months ago on October 7th, that we literally, there would be no Gaza.
Yes.
um, we pulled out unilaterally. We gave it to them. We handed it over, and they still, and they were working in Israel, and they still came over and did what they did.
Let me make one quick comment about that, real quick. And that is there used to be a hard liberal left wing group or section of Jewish people. And what I've been
Hmm.
hearing from several
Hmm.
different individual anecdotal stories, and a lot of the kibbutzes that were along the border to Gaza were of the liberal mindset. And they were all for a two-state solution, all for a Palestinian state.
These were
Let's
people who would
kumbaya the
drive.
friends of the Palestinians.
They would
Yes,
drive Gazans to the hospital. They
over,
would employ
yes,
them. They
yes.
employed them.
And then several anecdotal stories I've heard from members of those kibbutzes. They've said, "No more. I don't
Right.
believe in a two-state solution
Right.
anymore. No more a
Right.
Palestinian state." This is not about land. They want us
No,
dead. They want to kill all of us. They
they
want
came
us
over.
dead. It's not about
They were.
land. And
They,
there
they
was,
were. They were screaming Allahu Akbar.
yes,
They
yes.
weren't. They weren't saying return to get. No, it
And
was
then
Allahu
Carolyn
Akbar.
Glick recently reported that a recent survey just came out uh, surveying Israelis about a two-state solution. And prior to October 7th, it was maybe a 50-50 split. But
Maybe.
now
Okay.
81% of
Yeah.
Israelis say no Palestinian state. We cannot live with
Right.
them in peace. They want us
Right.
dead. It's not about
Right.
land. They just want us all dead. So go ahead,
Right.
continue.
And I think it was 70% of the Palestinians supported what happened on October 7th.
Yeah,
They said it
exactly.
was a good thing.
Yes.
The 70% of Harvard also thinks it was a good
Yes.
thing. So
Where's their moral clarity?
right.
I mean, this is truly a war of good versus evil.
It is. It
It
is.
really, really is. And we want to
That
be on
is
the
it in a
side of
nutshell.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Mila Hashem Elai, whoever's for God, come to me. I mean, you read the Bible and it's like, oh, it's a nice little story, and oh, those idiots who were so evil. And I remember Jordan Peterson did a lecture where he asked this class full of college students, okay, how many of you think that in 1938 you would not have been a Nazi? And most of the people, almost everyone raised their hand. And he's like, all of you would have been Nazis.
Mm, wow.
That's what we're looking at today, um, which is why Christians who stand behind Israel, they're passing a big test. It might be a no-brainer for some of you, but clearly not.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a lot of people who are really just not only failing it, but the grease of the pork is running down their beards. They're
Yes.
they're they're into it whole hog. So what I wanted to say was, it divided Israeli society. It was hugely painful. They used the IDF to pull the Jews out of Gush Katif. And Gush Katif was like a taste of, an Oslo was also a taste of the two-state solution. Why do I say that? Because what is the two-state solution? It's ethnic cleansing. It's saying Jews cannot live there. There are no Jews in Gaza. There are no Jews in Area A of the Palestine. We're not allowed
Like
to set
Warsaw.
foot there. It's worse because we're talking about an entire section of the globe, a section of the planet where Jews are not allowed to live. Everyone talks about the Palestinian refugees. Let's talk about the Jewish refugees. 750,000 Palestinians were kicked out of Palestinians is a crazy expression. Were kicked out of what's now Israel between 1948 and 1967. 850,000 Jews were kicked out of Arab countries, and all their property was taken. The Palestinians, no one would take them in, so they remained refugees 3 generations later. The Jews were family, so we brought them in. And the two-state solution is the creation of Judenrein. It's like saying, oh, we want to create more parts of this part of the world. We know that Jews are not allowed to live in 90% of the Middle East. There's only this one tiny dot of an area, smaller than New Jersey, where Jews are permitted to exist, not only live, but exist. Okay? And now we're going to make it worse. We're going to make even more areas where Jews are not allowed to exist. It's explicitly racist at the behest of the US. That was one of the conditions of the creation of Gaza from Condoleezza Rice, that no Jews would be allowed into Gaza. I'm sure they found a very diplomatic way to phrase it, but that's what it is. So that's what the two-state solution is. After the creation of Gush Katif, which incidentally was carried out the day after the 9th of Av. It was carried out on the 10th of Av.
And they were originally going to do it on the 9th, and they said,
They-
oops, that's a bad day in history. Let's move it up
Right.
one day.
Right. Just
Yes.
like the Arabs attacked us on Yom Kippur. This year they attacked us on Simchat Torah, which I'm sure one day we'll understand why that happened on that day. But they pick these days, and it's like, dude, can you pick like June 4th, like something that doesn't have significance?
But get this, Eliyahu. 24 hours later, America got Hurricane Katrina. And it was almost like you could see the hand of Hashem giving a smackdown to America. You're going to displace Jews and kick them out of their home. Okay, now you have all these displaced people in Louisiana that must now go to Houston and stay in the football stadium. So the parallels between what happened in Gaza Strip and what happened with Hurricane Katrina are quite stunning. And Bill Koenig did a whole book about it. But continue.
Yeah. I actually have
Yeah.
that book. Sure.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is that after Gush Katif, if you even, the word for a settler, which is actually a positive term, it has positive connotations, in Israel is mitnachel, which a mitnachel is a person who butts into line, takes something that isn't his. So that's the connotation. And until recently, the only people who spoke about going back to Gush Katif were portrayed as these extremists, crazies. The police had to shut them up because they would be leading to, this is incitement. If you say go back to Gush Katif, you could lead to an Arab uprising. So I was really shocked to see that there was Gila Gamliel. She's the Minister of Intelligence. She actually spoke in the plenum in front of the Knesset about, apparently there are several not extremists. She's not an extremist. She's from Likud. Not extremist MKs who are talking about what do we do with Gaza after the war.
Yes.
And it's really been discussed by a lot of pundits and supposed self-proclaimed experts, because what do we do? We have no idea what to do. And I'm like, ugh, you're an idiot. It's very obvious what you have to do. because you really shouldn't have Hamas in power, but you shouldn't wipe them out entirely. Why not? Okay. And Israelis, we get to a point where it's like they have this term tachlis. Let's get to the main point. So Israelis don't really appreciate silliness or PC, because PC never caught on, because we live a little bit too close to the bone, and there's zero tolerance for PC, for stupidity. So Hamas is an absolute not. The Palestinian Authority, not any
No.
better at all. And most of the Palestinians want Hamas. And when Israel left Gaza, it was supposed to be to allow the PA to take over, but Hamas won the election and killed them. So we want to do that again.
Yeah.
So there's a big question about what to do. And the really obvious solution is to
Annex it. Take it.
annex it. So there's apparently two levels. One level you're not allowed to talk about, but one level apparently the Knesset, they're beginning to talk about. You're not allowed to talk about expelling the Arabs because the Jews might take it over. Well, we had it until 2005 and we saw what happened. So maybe it would be good for the Arabs if we took it over again. What we are allowed to talk about is voluntary immigration, meaning we go into Gaza and we set up an office, a travel agent, and say, hey, you want a passport? You want a ticket? Wherever you want to go. Wherever you want to
Whatever
go.
country will accept them.
Well, I mean, they've accepted millions of Syrians. France is full of Afghanis. Sweden is no longer white.
Egypt won't take Palestinians.
And the
That's
thing
it.
is, why not? Jordan
Yeah.
won't. Jordan is more than 70% Palestinian, and they will not take a single one in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was fascinated to find out the Arabs do not consider the Palestinians to be Arab.
Uh-huh. They make a
Uh,
clear distinction.
sure,
Yes.
because they're not ethnically Arab.
Mm-hmm.
They're mixed. They've been very mixed. So, but that's exactly the problem. This could end. Just let them go somewhere else. They're
Let them go to
clearly,
Iran.
they're clearly refugees. Not only
Yes.
that, I mean, the UN, you define them as refugees. A refugee is defined as a person who was forced to leave their country of origin because of political unrest, because of violence, for other reasons. Okay. And there are certain rules in the UN about being a refugee. First of all, it's the person, not multi-generation. And once you declare citizenship in another country, well, you're not a refugee anymore. You found a place to live. Okay. But for some reason, in 1948, they established UNRWA just for Palestinians and redefined what a refugee is. There are 17,000 Palestinian refugees, but they're claiming millions. Why? Because it's multi-generational. There's a
Right.
person
Also, UNRWA, a lot of their employees, the employees of
work
UNRWA,
for
are
Hamas.
actually Hamas
Yes,
operatives. And
yes,
just
and
about
there's
every single hospital
right.
in Gaza Strip has
UNRWA
underneath.
was built and operated to make the conflict worse,
Yes.
not to make the plight of the Palestinians better. But I think it's like I look at the videos and the images of the IDF soldiers who go to Gaza, and they spray paint on the walls, back in Gush Katif. You had people who used to live there who are now in the IDF fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You have and most of the I think it's 40% of the casualties are religious Zionists, and they're only 20% of the population. Most of the combat troops are religious Zionists, and they did not support the expulsion from Gush Katif.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think a lot of what's interesting is what used to be considered a fringe lunatic um, ideology of of going back to Gush Katif is now mainstream.
You know, I didn't realize
And
this, but there's, go
and it's
ahead.
funny, the people who oppose it, it's like, so what you're saying is Gaza must always remain racist. Gaza must always remain apartheid. Gaza must always remain Judenrein. It is an ideal to prohibit Jews from living there. It is an ideal to prohibit Jews from living anywhere in the Middle East except for Tel Aviv. And even
So
there.
Gaza in ancient times was Philistia, and that's where Goliath and the Philistines were. But
That's,
also, I didn't realize this. There's always been a Jewish presence in Gaza. So both
yeah,
Abraham and Isaac went down to Gerar, and
true,
Gerar is in modern day Gaza. And so there's always
true.
been Jewish presence in Gaza.
The Philistines, first of all, it's not clear that that was really um, the name of their country.
Hmm.
Liflosh, um, it's literally, there was no place called Plishtim. There was no place, there was no country. It literally means invaders. They were invaders from somewhere. We're not really sure where. And then, of course, the Romans in the 2nd century set up Philistina, Syria,
Hmm.
um, as a way of disconnecting the Jews, and they never did it to any other country, as a way of disconnecting Jews from Israel. But it was never an independent nation. Philistine was never, and of course, you have a lot of people saying, pardon me, the British, after the Ottoman Empire. No, no, it was the British Mandate. There, it's certainly not mentioned in the Bible as a place. It was Gaza. It was part of Israel. Palestine was never mentioned in the Quran. Jerusalem was never mentioned in Quran. There really is no connection between Islam and Jerusalem. But they need a narrative. If you take away Jerusalem and say, there's no connection between Jerusalem and Islam, the Palestinians have no claim to anywhere in Israel, and they are all over the Middle East. So yeah, so this is a contrived conflict. No one cares about any Palestinian who has no contact with a Jew. When Judea and Samaria were illegally occupied by Jordan, the Palestinians didn't say a word, and if they did, the Jordanians just killed them. No other country said a word, and it was internationally recognized as being illegally occupied by Jordan. No one cares about any Palestinian unless they can blame the Jews, and they go to great lengths to blame the Jews.
Yes.
So, and it's certainly not biblical, not New Testament, not Old Testament. I mean, you know the Palestinian talking point that was actually invented by Said Nueba, I think, a Christian who was high up in the Palestinian Authority and very close to Yasser Arafat, and he adopted it that Jesus was a Palestinian.
What a lie from the
Um,
pit of hell.
and I mean, it's hugely this whole agenda. I mean, I can't imagine a devout Christian supporting everything the Palestinians say. I mean, yes, it's horrible that they're dying. They're hiding behind Hamas, and Hamas is holding a
Human
gun to their head
shields. Yes.
and saying, "You must stand here and protect me from the Jews, from the Israelis." I can't imagine a devout Christian following that narrative. You end up saying that Jesus was a Muslim
No.
Palestinian that born in Bethlehem, which was Palestinian. When if Jesus was around today, he would not be allowed to set foot in there because he's a Jew.
So let me ask
Um,
you this, Eliyahu. What can Christians do right now in a practical, tangible way to stand with Israel and to support Israel? What are
First,
some, is there something you can suggest that we do?
first of all, do not be silent. Don't be afraid. Okay, be out there shouting, and that's not a small thing. After October 7th, I noticed that the Jews in America were silent. That really silent for a lot of reasons. A lot of them were left wing, and now they're looking at their former allies that they had supported for so long. Like every Jew was like BLM, BLM, and now BLM is saying, yeah, more ultralights, more gliders, so we can kill more Jews.
There was a
And
Stand for Israel gathering in Washington, D.C. about a month ago, and both Jews and
and I
Christians showed up in large numbers in D.C. at the Capitol
and
Mall.
and several of my Christian friends told me that they were the ones. There were members of the family of hostages, several of them who went to speak. And the left-wing protesters, Jews, were trying to attack them. And it was the Christians, it was my Christian friends, God bless them, who stood between the anti-Israel people and the families of the hostages. It was the Christians. Jews were afraid to speak up after October 7th, afraid to speak up. They were in shock. I think it was the reaction of the Christians that gave them enough strength to speak up. So speaking up, hugely important. Don't underestimate that. I saw this video of, there was a guy ripping down pictures of hostages, and a couple of rednecks. It was in Queens, New York, and a couple of rednecks walked up. I'm not Jewish, but you can't be doing this. This is America. God bless those men. God bless those men.
Yes.
I mean, speaking up. We have a tradition in Judaism that Passover is called Pesach, meaning the speaking mouth, because the first stage is we went out from Egypt thanks to the languages, the words of speaking. We cried out, we screamed, the mouth. It is an action. Don't underestimate it. Speaking up, it is an action. And it is so important.
Yes.
Because from what I understand, the majority of Americans stand with Israel, but the loudmouths, the idiots, the anger-filled hatred, people calling for the blood of Jews, they're a minority, but they're a loud minority.
Yes.
And they
So
have to be outshouted. So that's number one.
Attend a pro-Israel rally, speak up. Go ahead.
Speak
What's
up
number two?
at work.
Yes.
Okay. Put up hostage posters at your bulletin board at work. Anything you can do. Put it on in front of your house. They hate that. Why? Because you're evil, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. I'm not going down silently. You've got those hostages, and it is the clearest form of evil. There's no way you can explain that. There's no way you can explain it away. And that girl, Mia, they just did an interview with her. She was a hostage. And they used her in a couple of propaganda movies to say, oh, we're treating them nicely. They did surgery on her without anesthesia. They didn't feed her. She was at the I think she was at the festival, and the festival was for peace. It was a peace festival, and they specifically attacked it. And she sat there and she said she was being held captive in someone's house. In someone's house. The wife was there, the kids were there.
Yes.
And the father was guarding her. And she said, there are no innocent Gazans. Every single Gazan is a terrorist. This is a girl who used to be left wing.
Yes. Yes. Number two, what else we can do? We can certainly pray. And I'd like to put this as a plug. There's a website called altarofprayer.com, and it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is basically a Zoom meeting that never ends, and it's all prayer focused to Israel and to the Jewish people.
Really?
Yes. Wow. 100%, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, altarofprayer.com. And prior to the war, the main focus was to pray for Aliyah, for the Jewish people of all the nations to return. But of course, now they're also praying regarding the war effort and for victory for Israel regarding this war. But
I'm not a
pray,
particularly
pray, pray for Israel
I
and for
am
the
not a
Jewish people.
particularly devout person, and when you want to talk about prayer, you got to talk to my wife, not to me.
Okay.
She's the master of prayer. But I will tell you, prayer, oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We are
Yes.
seeing prayer night and day, and
Yes.
it has its effect.
And miracles are
Um,
happening. Miracles are happening.
absolutely.
Yes.
I will tell you, I don't like to ask for money, but I got to tell you, one of the ways we knew that the war started was all the young men started leaving the synagogue. It was a holiday, and all the young men started getting up and leaving. And and we knew they were going, all of them were leaving. We're like, oh, we know what that means. Even now, the economy is, half speed because all the men are at war. It's You can't run an economy during the war. It's very, very difficult. Israel for the next we're gonna the economy is shot for a while. I mean, thank God we're the startup nation. Thank God we there you go. Thank God we know how to make things work. But and we're
I want to
decent.
share about this. This is Israel 365, where you can donate and where you can help with your finances. Can you share a little bit about this?
Well, it's kind of difficult to believe, I kind of laugh when people say, Israel, IDF, it's all powerful army. I love when they say that, I even love, they say, the IDF, they're aggressive and vicious soldiers. And I'm like, we are the offspring of King David. We are not, in the words of Menachem Begin, we are not the weak-kneed Jews who of the Holocaust. We know how to fight. But it's kind of, if you want to have a belief that God takes his part in the Israeli wars, I just remember every year when I showed up for reserve duty, and even when I went into the army, it's like it takes you 3 days just to get a shirt that fits. It's crazy, and the shirt that when you finally get it is like from the Korean War or something. It's like it's crazy. And then I used to get my M16 and it wobbled in the middle because it was just so old and beat up. The IDF is, I mean, the good stuff is really good, but the average soldier gets some pretty junky equipment.
Yes.
And even a lot of the basic equipment, and we're talking about the winter time right now. It's not snow, but it's a lot of rain. Even the basic equipment, it's not always there. Ceramic vests, Kevlar helmets.
So
It's
let me
not
jump
always
in.
there.
If you go to Israel365.com, up at the top, it'll say Israel is at war. And if you click Israel is at war, it will take you to this page that we're looking here on the screen. And I totally, with Tuli Weiss and that whole organization, I have every confidence that whether you donate $5, $10, $50, $100, however much you donate, it's going to go. They make sure it gets to where the need is. It gets to the IDF soldiers. It gets to families that have been displaced. There's thousands, tens of thousands of Jewish people who have been displaced along the southern border to Gaza, but also
Not just
in
not
the
just the
north,
southern border, not just the southern
up
border.
by Hezbollah.
I was
Yeah,
shocked that they
thousands of them.
evacuated Kiryat Shmona. Kiryat Shmona is a
Yes.
big city, 20,000 people.
And they're
And
displaced from their homes. Yes. And
and
so
we
when
were
you
talking
donate,
about how no one takes in the Gazan refugees. Um, we're taking
yes.
care of it. They're a
So this is
family.
a really, really great place to donate.
Right.
And it gets to where it needs to go to be a blessing to the Jewish people. So please give generously. And Israel365.com, click on Israel is at war, and it'll take you to this page. This is a great place to donate. There are lots of other groups. There's the Shiloh Children's Fund. There's also hayovel.com when you go there. They have
They
a
do
special
amazing work
fund,
too, thank God.
Itai, Project Itai. There's CFI, Jerusalem.org. That's Christian Friends of Israel. There's a lot of different groups out there. Bridges for Peace. but this is a very
Yeah.
good one, and I know it's going to get to the Jewish people, and bless Elia,
Also,
Tully
also,
Weiss for the good work he does to
thank
get
God.
that
Thank
money
God.
out to the people where it's much needed.
Thank God.
Thank you.
And there's one other level that you can help,
Okay.
um, which is to be here, to
Ah.
come, to visit.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, you can even volunteer here. There's a program in the Army called SAR-L. My mom did SAR-L for decades. My mom, God bless her, and she was retired. And they were doing things, they would sit around in the warehouses and repack the medical kits and do all kinds of stuff like that, which you don't really want the soldiers to do that. And it was very social, and my mom loved it, and she was in Israel, and it was great. SAR-L is still up and running, and people come, and they've been volunteering for SAR-L. I think they've had 20,000 people in SAR-L since the war broke out. 20,000 people helping out. God bless him. I just hosted for Shabbat the son of a friend, Gunnar Rambo, the son of Pete Rambo. And he came here. He had planned his trip before the war broke out, just to come and spend in Israel. And he said he was doing all kinds of stuff like packing snacks for soldiers and just doing all kinds of, little things. And you don't realize that's huge. You're on the front
Yes.
line and
Yes.
someone comes up to you with a bag full of chips and candy.
Mhm.
It's not a lifesaver, but it's a soul saver.
Mhm.
And Gunnar did that. I just got contacted by a dear friend who's Jewish who lives in Portland, and he's coming next month. He's he's a green grocery. He works in a grocery store, and his thing is organic vegetables. There is a lot of vegetables and fruit rotting on the vine right now because
You
there's
can tell, you can also be a volunteer at hayovel.com,
exactly
and that's what they do is they
that's what
serve
they do.
the farmers in the heartland of Israel up in the Shomron.
And
And so hayovel.com.
there are even organizations that volunteers, and we had those cowboys come
Yes.
over
Yes. With
because and it
Hayovel.
wasn't and I bet they worked hard because
Yes.
there were a lot of tragically there were a lot of foreign workers who were also taken hostage and murdered because down south is a lot of agriculture, and they were taken captive, um, and no more are coming in. And it's like there's an old joke about a scorpion wants to get across the Nile River, and he asks the turtle to take him across, and the turtle says, but you'll sting me and I'll die. And he said, but I'm on your back in the river, I'll die too. He's like, okay. So he takes him across. In the very middle, the scorpion stings him and they both drown. And the turtle says, but you're going to die too. And he says, it's the Middle East, I can't help myself. And that's unfortunately true. The we used to have um, many thousands of Gazans come in every day to work for us, and usually in the manual labor, and they would come across for healthcare. They're not coming across right now, and even if we need them, I can't see too many employers being happy about employing them.
Mhm.
Um, and this has happened before, but
Tell me more
we
about the
have.
Sorel. How do you, if somebody wanted to follow up on that and go to a
Ooh.
website, how do you spell Sorel?
It's SAR. I think there's a space in there. EL.
Oh,
SAR-L. Okay. It's
Sarel. So maybe
yeah.
Sorel.com, something like that.
SAR-L. You want to maybe IDF. Um, but it's a lovely program. They put you up. And they also need right. It's yeah, SAR-L.org.
Awesome.
Okay. They have
Awesome.
the application on the site.
And
Uh,
actually, Jeremy Gimpel went on a trip last week down to the
God bless them.
southern border, and one of the
Right.
kibbutzes that he visited, it was filled with all these big white tents, and people were volunteering and making all this food, meals, hot meals for the IDF when they would come out of Gaza and take a little R&R, a little break. And so there were also volunteers, international volunteers, that were serving the food, making the food, preparing the food for the IDF to serve. So this is definitely a time, I agree, to come to Israel and to serve and
Right.
be a volunteer in whatever venue you choose. But this
Right.
is
And
the time to
also even just to come tour, um, Israel 365 is running a tour in May. And I mean, we are feeling so alone. And even Biden is not, he's doing more than waffling now. He's starting to tell Israel to stop to not take out Hamas. And he's even telling us not to fly into the north. And it's basically saying, okay, it's okay if your soldiers die, but you can't really fight the war. Like we're feeling so alone. I have never in my life felt like a Jew like I have in the last few months. I never understood. We're 0.2% of the world population. Why would anyone, we're like the ultimate oppressed minority. And we're feeling very alone.
So come on the tour in May
Come
with
on the
Rabbi
tour.
Tuli Weiss. Come on the tour.
Go to the middle of Jerusalem and scream out, "We love you, Jerusalem. We love you, Israel." We need it so bad. We need it so.
We love you, Israel. We love you. We love you.
need
We
it so
love
bad.
you.
We are feeling so alone. We've got those evil, useful idiots who the chickens for KFC. And we need the devout Christians. And I mean, one of you is worth 1,000 of them because they're idiots. And if you have a devout Christian saying, "I will always love Israel because God said so,"
Yes.
that'll stand up against 1,000 of those idiots.
You're my
So,
family. You're my people.
Yep.
You're people of the book.
You're related to my rabbi.
That's funny. I follow a Jewish rabbi.
Yeah.
That's right.
And maybe we'll finally fix that. We'll finally fix that because gosh, we need it. And so yeah, that's what you can do that also. Just come to visit. If you were planning on coming to Israel, don't cancel. And if you weren't planning to come to Israel, you can come. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry, America. We got your back.
And if God has called you to it, you'll be under his
Yes.
wings.
Yes. You will see miracles. You will see miracles in your day.
Yes.
I've seen miracles.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eliyahu. It's been a wonderful time to visit with you. We'll definitely have to do this again. Thank you,
It's been
Eliyahu.
very blessed. Thank God. Thank God. Thank you.